Hi, I'm Professor Alastair Pearce from Working with Creatives, the organisation that helps you work with your creative colleagues. Creative people are typically more neurotic, antisocial, and less conscientious than other groups of people. Not my idea, but from Dr. Thomas Komaro Premuzic. The quotation is from his Working with Creatives, a short guide for everyone else. Brilliant title, wish I'd thought of it. But neurotic, antisocial, and less conscientious? Not a great write-up for creatives. For this video, let's just concentrate on the antisocial characteristic. So my character today is Solo, your colleague who really wants to be left to work alone. If you look carefully, you'll find him hiding away in lots of organisations. I expect there are a few where you work. You can easily recognise Solo in team meetings. He's the one who will sometimes announce his big solution, and often it's really terrifically creative. But otherwise, he tends to keep quiet and might even be doodling on his jotter. Okay, we appreciate his flashes of creative insight, but we also recognise that teamwork is becoming more and more important to the success of many organisations. Why this should be is complicated, but I guess it's got something to do with the complexity of work and perhaps the shrinking of status distinctions among colleagues in companies with progressive management structures. And it may be that this democratization of deliberation is accelerated by a workforce with a more equal gender distribution. But hey, they're just my assumptions. What is clear is that Solo is at risk of being left behind as team working becomes the norm rather than the exception. Pity. His creativity is vital. What might lie behind Solo's solitary work style? How about stories? Unlikely? Well, in my experience, a need to make up stories is shared by many creative people, including Solo. Creativity and the birth of a story are almost the same thing. It's really hard to decide if a story is an example of creativity or if creativity is an example of a story. What I'm suggesting is that creativity in organizations is like the writing of a story. It starts with vague ideas, most of which have to be binned, and then there's a time of discovery and experimentation before the final components and overall shape of the product start to emerge. Then, at the end, will anybody actually buy it? It's just the same as the birth of a story. The chaos of initial ideas, their eventual distillation into a coherent narrative that actually works, followed by the nervousness of selling it. But there is a difference between the evolution of your company project and the author's story. Today's organisation has probably seen their creative narrative develop within a team of colleagues, whilst the writer's story is almost certainly within the control of a single storyteller, the author. Now, why should that be? Bonnie Ziegler, in her book Dear Client, gives an answer. She says, because vision is not a group activity. And this supports my conclusion that Solo prefers to work alone because he is fundamentally a storyteller and wishes, like most authors, to remain in control of his vision, his story. It's not surprising, it's his story. Okay, quite neat, Alastair. A nice bit of creative narrative unfolding a coherent series of ideas, reaching a plausible conclusion. But my little Solo story depends on vision is not a group activity. And I'm not sure, really, I'm not sure if I completely believe that. What do you think? So I'll end my story of Solo now before I find any more loose ends and simply but reliably note that whatever the reasons might be behind Solo being Solo, if it's just team workers your company needs, then Solo has to go or be magically transformed into Mr. I Love Teams or carefully managed so that his skill in producing creative work useful to your company can be preserved within wider contributions of other colleagues. And this is possible. but tricky. If you think your company could do with sharpening its skills in working with solo, then visit my website at workingwithcreatives.co.uk to discover how my organisation can help you work effectively and happily with him.